Hello everyone. Warm welcome to all the participants to today's webinar. My name is Sanjay Kirimanjeshwar. I head Global Marketing at Amagi. I will be your moderator for today's session. For this webinar, all the attendees will be in listen-only mode. We will also have a Q&A towards the end of the presentation. So please type in your questions in the chat window and we will answer them in the order we receive. In 2013, Netflix famously proclaimed, "The goal is to become HBO faster than HBO becomes us." 5 years later, the essence of that statement can't be more relevant than it is today. Most of the digital-first media companies that we are seeing are staring at a fast emerging reality where they are directly competing with traditional linear networks that are adding VOD and linear OTT streams into their product mix. In today's webinar, we have with us two industry experts who are engaging very closely with digital-first media companies on their linear OTT charter. Baskar is the co-founder of Amagi. He's a technology enthusiast. He oversees business strategy, investment, and product development at Amagi. We also have Mark Stephens with us. Mark Stephens is a partner solutions architect for media and entertainment vertical at AWS. He's the global segment leader for partners focused on this vertical, and his focus is to build a diverse ecosystem of partners on media and entertainment on AWS. So gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you both, and over to you now.
Hi, this is Baskar from Amagi. Good morning, everyone, and good evening if you're in this part of the world and in the Asian subcontinent. Just to start the whole conversation, I think if you are in circa 2015, and if you have interesting content and you want to have aspirations of becoming a content business, there were very few options fundamentally in terms of how do we go about monetizing and distributing content. And obviously the biggest possibilities were YouTube and Daily Motion, if you look at it. And if you're an SWOT-based approach where you want to get subscription revenue, you had Netflix and Amazon Prime Video in some fashion. Obviously your content has to be really premium to be able to do that. And obviously there was always a direct-to-consumer strategy that you could have used largely by leveraging applications that you could have built for some Apple TV and the Roku, as well as for Android and for Amazon Fire Stick, for example, or the Fire TV approach. So those are the alternatives that you had in the early days of what I call the digital revolution from a content standpoint. But if you're a digital-first content company today, I think it's a great time to be starting these businesses. And the reason why it's interesting is because of the increasing content consumption that's happening worldwide. We already know that a lot of consumers are starting to consume a lot more content. We're seeing a breadth of content increasing as well as the consumption patterns increasing. And largely, obviously, online has been a big driver for this particular growth of consumption. The millennial needs are very unique in some sense, and it's both a breadth of genres are evolving, fundamentally targeting the millennial population. These are not the exact same things that you saw on television, but really broader genres that could actually be tapped into fundamentally, which is very, very interesting that's happening already. We're seeing content distribution options dramatically expanding and increasing. And we'll talk about that in a moment and what sort of content distribution options that you have. And obviously that's tied to monetization of venues that are starting to really open up as well. So kind of, it's an exciting time if you're looking for digital-first content to be distributed and monetized in this particular day and age. If you look at it now, what are the options that you have is clearly the evolution of virtual MVPDs that have come down, specifically at least from the US context, is an exciting proposition. So if you're a digital-first company, these are operators who are on an all IP network, reaching consumers and largely targeting towards millennial population with the skinny bundles are an extremely attractive proposition for delivering and distributing and monetizing content today. Look at it, the likes of DirecTV Now, YouTube TV, Sling, and Hulu's, a whole slew of possibilities exist today for you to extend that particular capability. There is also ad-supported vMVPD platforms. Roku, for example, is creating its own linear channel opportunities. Zumos, the Plutos, the Fubos, a whole slew of a new set of service providers and MVPDs are evolving in the virtual world. So these are really creating destinations which could be interesting if you're a digital-first company today to be able to address that. Obviously, the direct-to-consumer strategy exists and it continues to grow, and there are many more possibilities, both from a connected TV platforms and otherwise. And there is also international distribution, which is pretty interesting. A lot of our customers, for example, have been starting to look at bringing their content international, and consumption across geographies and cultural boundaries are getting broken down. And that's also an interesting possibility for companies and content to be transported worldwide. And again, if you look at it, and this is kind of corroborated with market research. So market research tells us that both direct-to-consumer strategy and the virtual MVPD strategy are great strategies to go after. And we're seeing some tremendous explosive growth opportunities in front of us, right? The graph that you see here demonstrates the sort of scale and capabilities from a dollar value standpoint. So roughly about $23 billion worth of operator and revenue growth that we're going to see over the next 4 or 5 years. And that's an interesting place to be in from a growth standpoint. And the other, in conjunction with all of the growth of the operator ecosystem, interesting thing that's happening, at least on the online world, is the evolution of live content starting to become a predominant part of our viewing experiences. Yes, what has existed, it's been always available for us. And thanks to Netflix and Amazon Prime and others who kind of really popularized these platforms, but we're seeing an extensive amount of live content coming online. There's be it sports, news, a bunch of events. And so what we're seeing is a professional live content coming into the system, be it college sports, be it really school level, baseball, hockey, soccer. That's going to drive a lot of traffic going forward. And businesses which are trying to really create live sports, news, event-based strategies for creating content, I think it's an exciting time to be in that particular space as well. If you look at, if you want to deliver content to new distribution platform, so I think there are two classic set of content distribution models that's evolved over time. One is what we call the live linear channel, which is the sort of focus today for all of us, and I'll be focusing more on those capabilities. If you look at a live linear channel and you want to deliver to a platform today, I think there are 3 top things that's expected from any of the delivery, any of the content owner to the delivery to the platform. First is obviously the EPG information, so that the program guide looks and feels like television, so that it can be passed to the end consumers for them to understand what sort of program schedules that you're expecting. Second is a targeted linear content stream in a specific format. And when I say targeted, you could essentially understand the platform's needs and demographics and have different set of linear streams created. So and we'll talk more about how targeting helps these sort of capabilities, but that linear content stream each one of them have different formats and protocols to really support, but that's largely what they're expecting you to deliver. For example, if you're a digital first company. Third thing, which is critical from a monetization standpoint, is to be able to at least have opportunities and ad avail opportunities identified as part of the linear streams, so that downstream the operators are able to monetize it for you and for them in this particular process. So that's another important thing to consider when you're looking for a live linear channel. Obviously, the other side is really about WOD, and typically either for catch-up or for an SWOD, TWOD sort of experience, for transaction WOD or for subscription WOD experience. You need to deliver the assets, again, in specific formats, which are very different between different operators. The metadata that goes along with that, as well as the ad avail opportunities on the WOD asset, so that the mid-roll targeted advertising can actually be monetized as well. So those are, if you look at a package, if you're going to an operator, that's essentially what you're expected to really provide as a full digital-first company delivering a complete content portfolio to an operator today. So kind of diving deep into the linear workflow capabilities, right? So the fundamental thing is to look at, if you look at what the flow, the first thing is to really get your content and ingest the content. And ingest content is the phase where we suck the content onto an infrastructure, where essentially once you have the content, you schedule your playlists, which is essentially creating the schedule, the linearization of that particular schedule. Either if it's live or non-live, it's very different, but you kind of start linearizing the schedule and creating a schedule from a playlist standpoint. Then you essentially have to manage the playout because it's a 24/7 running case system that you need to really manage. And the management changes depending on whether it's a live orchestration that you're going to do in terms of ad breaks and graphics versus non-live content, which is file-based assets, which are repeated in a particular thematic fashion. And obviously you want to monetize it, and monetization is where we talked about really targeted advertising, monetization capabilities, as well as what the vMVPD operators do today. And we'll talk about all of this today in this particular flow. But if you're a digital first company, this is the workflow and the process that you need to be aware of for delivering a complete linear channel. And if you look at it from a challenge standpoint, right? The biggest challenge is really about ingesting live and library content. Essentially, basically, if you look at it, because live could come from multiple sources, and your content can be in multiple different formats. So normalizing all of that assets and profiles and making it broadcast grade is a very critical part of the whole ecosystem. And when you have thousands of hours of content over the years, one of the biggest challenges, the quality checks that's needed, so that there's no blacks and there is no audio losses. All of that's very critical to really bring it to a normalized fashion. Once you do that, then the other trick of the whole trade is really about how do you kind of identify trigger locations and add opportunities so that the monetization is really kicked in from day one. And obviously, system redundancies becomes extremely important and challenging because it's important that it's a 24/7 service and that runs end to end. And if you have sports and capabilities thereof, it's critical for you to address that as well. So if you look at it, what we're going to talk about today is how is Amagi and AWS addressing these linear challenges, delivery challenges for all of us, right? And we've been partners with AWS, because Amagi and AWS have been long-term partners. We've been running linear channels on AWS platform for the last 4 years, and an extremely mature capability where we have about 150 plus channels running live on these particular capabilities today already. So from our experiences, if you look at it, AWS and Amagi, we have a complete portfolio snapshot that I'm going to demonstrate here, right? When you ingest and store your content, we put it on AWS S3 buckets. That's S3 becomes our primary storage option, including archival on Glacier services. But we use a complete Amazon portfolio of product lines here, fundamentally. So AWS S3 is our core buckets where we actually store the content. All our automation, media processing capabilities runs on EC2 Spot instances, as well as with AWS Media Convert, which I think Mark is going to, Mark from AWS will be covering lots of details on related to that as well today. We do all the playout management, again, a bunch of AWS Lambda services, which are serverless offerings from AWS, as well as on the EC2 instances, which are the core workhorses from a compute instance standpoint, is where we run all our Cloud4 playout capabilities today, as well as all our monitoring capabilities. We obviously use Direct Connect to connect to traditional platforms, as well as media live capabilities, again, which Mark will cover today, to deliver the content to all the end platforms. And eventually, all the security and access is leveraging all of Amazon's cloud security capabilities, be it all of the IAM credentials and all the RDS related aspects from a database standpoint thereof is what we leverage today. If you look at it from a content ingestion standpoint, I think what we're showing here is when somebody gives a content, first thing it happens is there's a transcoder sitting, which kind of transcodes all the content on the cloud. So there's a cloud transcoding is very critical, where we normalize all the content from different sources that companies have today. We take in the live sources and ingest them as well, and eventually goes to an automation platform that's running on the cloud, what we call the Amagi Flip, which controls the playout, which again is running on the EC2 instances today. And all of them are connected to the S3 buckets, which is the storage, AWS storage, on which all of the Playout capabilities are addressed today. So the ingest part is from traditional on-premise content. We suck the content into an Amazon S3 buckets through a transcoding step here. If you look at from a processing standpoint, and that's where it becomes interesting from as I talked about asset normalization, the quality check processes, and all the preview generation and the WAD transformations from one format to another, everything is run on an AWS Lambda platform today, right? So that's essentially what we run on a serverless implementation of this whole capability. And if you look at the sort of QC processes, there's a bunch of QC processes very critical to analyze all of the, keep the content really sane, be it blacks and frozen frames and subtitles and loudness detection, which is a regulatory need in specific markets. We identify all of that from a QC process, and that all runs on a Lambda or an EC2 instances today. So once you have all your content normalized, then it comes into a cloud media manager, which is like it's an asset manager, which is kind of stored on the cloud. So all the content is stored on the cloud. And you have very extremely user-friendly experiences through which a UI capability so that you can actually leverage those stuff. And all of this runs on an Amazon cloud today, right? Once you have it, then comes the whole scheduling part where you create the playlist. And again, there's a user-friendly option to create the playlist from scratch, or you could upload it from your existing scheduling system that you have. So if you're a digital-first company starting off, no problems. You have a complete playlist scheduling system as integrated as part of the Playout here, where you could just start from scratch and start creating your own playlist. That's the beauty of this particular system. And it's fairly sophisticated, where our customers today use it to create playlists from scratch and start creating and mounting a complete linear channel from here on. Once you do that, you need to have a sophisticated control model so that you could understand what's happening on the channel at every point of time, and more importantly, be able to control it in terms of skipping assets or disabling audio, video, logos, graphics, or even play a new graphics, for example. This gives you the interactivity and the control that you need. And it's very, very critical if you look at it, because you are on a virtualized platform and your content is getting delivered to remote distribution platforms and locations. So this provides you the complete control, and it's very important to look at a very flexible control system, which allows you to do that. And if you look at it, the other interesting aspect is live. As I told you, live is becoming part of the overall user experiences to all of the digital-first companies and the platforms that we work with today. And as part of live, what we mean by orchestration is basically taking a live feed, bringing it to what we call a smart switching fabric on the cloud, which allows you to seamlessly meld recorded content and advertising integration as well as graphics integration, and create a complete channel which you can actually stream it either to all the online platforms directly, to direct to consumers, or to different VMVPDs that we talked about. So that's exactly an orchestration system. And again, we have a fairly advanced live control capability, which is a very low latency capability, which allows you to take in a live stream, orchestrate with advertising and graphics and all the capabilities before you actually push it out onto a full stream. So I think the trick of the whole thing is to have broadcast-grade features, capabilities, and performances, but on a complete virtualized infrastructure, which is suited for a self-service sort of an option or a managed option. So that's the basic advantage from a cloud player standpoint that we're looking at. And to look at it from a monetization, so we talked about ingesting your content, scheduling your playlist, which is a very important part of the overall equation. And then once you do it, how do you even control the playout that's happening on a day-to-day basis? And eventually you want to have monetization. And if you look at monetization, there are two aspects to consider, right? If you look at virtual MVPDs, a large part of virtual MVPDs can support subscription revenue. For example, that's something that you need to talk to your MVPDs and the distribution platforms that you work with to look at what sort of dollars per subscriber. And there are many different formats. Are you part of the free tier package or what they call the general package, or are you in specialized subscription packages? And the bundles will determine the sort of economics of what works for you, and depends on the content, the popularity, and the platform that you need to address. The other aspect which we're seeing as a norm across the industry is that typically the target, all the platforms would like to do targeted advertising. And they are essentially doing a 2-minute per hour sort of an advertising model today, where they take a couple of minutes and if you enable those 2 minutes, they will monetize it for you and provide you a rev share on that particular model. But what's interesting also to look at is, if you look at it in a 10-minute per hour sort of an advertising model scenario, you have another 8 minutes which is really remaining today. There are a couple of ways or maybe 3 ways to really look at monetizing that. Either if your channel has good popularity, you could technically directly do business ad sales yourself, depending on the infrastructure in the business that you are in. You could, if you enable Nielsen rating on the platform, this could give you the traditional TV ad revenue pie as well, because all of the vMVPDs today are measured in the AC Nielsen realm. So if you are a licensee of the Nielsen watermarking system, for example, our Playout does integrate Nielsen watermarking as well into the system. So you could technically have Nielsen watermarking as a mechanism to get traditional TV ad revenue. The third interesting evolution that's happening is also programmatic selling on a CPM basis, but on linear TV channels. And this is a new model that's evolving across the globe. And obviously, Amagi has some offerings in that front, but that's an interesting possibility that's evolving as well, to be able to monetize the 8 minutes an hour happening as well today. But a critical part from a Playout standpoint is important that the Playout enables you to create SCUDY 35 markers so that the policies can be set in a very flexible fashion so that the operators downstream can technically monetize your ad avails and provide you the revenue share. So it's a very fundamental important feature for any Playout to be able to support SCUDY markers, which is the format for triggers today, which needs to be handshaked with the operator, and that's very critical. The other part we talked about is the programmatic monetization, which essentially means that for example, Amagi has a system called Thunderstorm, which allows us to really have insertion of different advertising at different parts of the linear stream, but everything on a CPM or it's a programmatically advertised model, but on a cost per impression basis that's kind of addressed. The scope of this presentation this is too advanced for the scope of this presentation, but more than happy to share some notes offline on this particular front. Now, if you look at it, because it's on AWS cloud, and obviously we have leveraged all of the credentials and the capabilities from a security standpoint. All of this runs in a virtual private cloud infrastructure. Being able to access playlists as well as being able to connect to all of the content. All of them is in a ring. It's a VPC ring inside the AWS platform, so it's completely secure. It's protected against general service attacks. All the content and the access is encrypted and authenticated. What goes in and comes out, everything is encrypted, both output stream as well as the input content that you actually enable today. So that's essentially the infrastructure from a security standpoint, and absolutely secure, and we leverage the AWS infrastructure heavily for managing our security. Look at it from a reliability standpoint, and again, it's critical if you're running 24/7 channels, and if you're giving to platforms which are premium platforms. We kind of build out a redundancy model which is across multiple different availability zones. What Amazon has done from an AWS standpoint is to provide multiple different data centers in different geographic zones, even in the same region, for example, which helps us to have different instances running on 2 different locations, so that even in the catastrophe of a full data center loss or that particular instance has gone down or your software is crashed, the other one runs completely. So we feel that's very, very critical. If you're going to key large platforms, be it Hulu or a Sling or a YouTube Live or an Amazon Prime, it's critical to have redundancies integrated. And you kind of done that for a lot of our customers today. So coming to the distribution of content, I would ask Mark to provide you an understanding of the capability of the channel delivery process. So once you've created your streams, how do you kind of distribute it from the AWS platform onto your platforms? AWS has many different options, and I think Mark is going to kind of cover that particular part of the presentation for you right now.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Baskar and the Amagi team. Really appreciate the opportunity to co-present with you. So I'm a partner solutions architect, and I think they said in the beginning, it's my role to work with partners like Amagi in the media and entertainment space and to help enable them on the platform. So, the first thing I'm going to talk about is, we have something that we call media solutions in AWS as part of AWS Answers. And so when we get a lot of questions around a certain workload, for example, video on demand, we actually put together an actual full workflow with a CloudFormation template that shows you exactly how you can build something like this yourself. So, this video on demand solution, everything always starts typically from S3, where you want to store your content in a bucket. From there, you can get notifications, event notifications, and use serverless Lambda to start the processing of your content. The great thing about Lambda, of course, is you're running your code without provisioning servers. You're only paying for the compute time you consume, and if your code's not running, you're not paying for it. So the other important part of this workflow is something called step functions. And step functions are a way to provide orchestration for your Lambda functions. As soon as you start getting 5, 10, 15, 20 Lambda functions, you're going to need some way to orchestrate those. So the nice thing about step functions, you can provide error and retry logic all within that context. From there, with those step functions, you can do things like run it through Elastic Transcoder. This is sort of an older diagram. I didn't grab the latest one, unfortunately, but if you go and you Google AWS Answers, and we can share this link later, it shows you how to integrate with something like Media Convert or some of our new services that are in the console. Really, you could sort of plug in any transcoder here that you like. From there, you can do things like persist metadata to DynamoDB. You want to use things like CloudWatch and maybe SNS for notifications, and to split the processing across different Lambda functions. From there you can publish to new buckets, new S3 buckets, and then in the end serve your content through something like CloudFront or really any CDN you prefer to use. So one of the most important things on AWS and kind of one of our main goals is security. And the great thing about AWS and our scale is that it allows us to invest significantly more in security policing and countermeasures on the platform, really, than any large company can afford. So if you look at, Baskar showed IAM. So IAM is really a way to securely control access to your AWS services and resources. You can enforce those, you can audit them. One security best practice is least privilege. So if you have an EC2 instance or a Lambda function with a role, that role has fine-grained access. For example, if that's only doing media transcoding, it should only have access to that S3 bucket or a certain portion of that bucket only for maybe pulling down the media. The other thing you can do is use AWS config. AWS config is a way to record and evaluate configuration of your resources. So then you can really track changes to your environment over time, and you can look and see, is this change, is it a secure change? Is it the right change? If not, you can roll resources back to a known good state. Another really interesting service we launched at reInvent was something called guard duty. So say, for example, you have an EC2 instance and you've opened it up to a certain portion of the internet. Well, guard duty can watch through different metadata and some machine learning, watch that instance and show you, for example, someone's trying to SSH brute force it and then give you notifications. So a great kind of innovation and proof to you that security is top of our mind. The VPC is your virtual private cloud and your main, it's the way you isolate your environment using things like private subnets and security groups and network ACLs. So, with your VPC, you want to be using private subnets for most of your resources, unless they specifically have to be exposed to the internet, for example, say a web server. But all your content processing and things accessing your S3 buckets, those would be in private subnets or Lambda functions, which have no way of being accessed from the internet if you didn't expose them through something like API Gateway. As Baskar mentioned, encryption. So you can, with S3, you can use, or EBS volumes, you can use encryption at rest. So you can just tell us, click a checkbox and say encrypt this, we'll manage the keys for you. However, if you want to encrypt it before you upload it, you could still manage keys in KMS, use your own encryption, and then upload that to S3 yourself. Another interesting concept is AWS organizations. And so you can create access policies for your users and groups to centrally manage your accounts. So if you're a large organization, you have multiple accounts going on, it's a way from a high level to make sure that those accounts and policies and groups are secure. Another thing on the right-hand side is AWS artifacts. And one artifact we recently released was it was on with a group called ISE, Independent Security Evaluators, and it's a pre-release studios and media asset management hardening guide. So it's really prescriptive guidance of the controls you should be setting up and implementing, like digital asset management in AWS. And this is specifically for secure pre-release media assets. So just kind of another way we are, we're working with customers and partners to ensure that they are highly secure on our platform. So next I'm going to talk about Hulu. They released an offering, with more than, this was a talk at reInvent they gave in 2017, and they discussed their new live TV service and cloud DVR platform. So this is more than 50 live channels. And for those of you that don't know, Hulu is a joint venture with 21st Century Fox, Disney, Comcast, and Time Warner. So one of the challenges we do see and we hear constantly in this kind of workflow is serving a live manifest. And so, when you have, these manifests being generated on the fly from content that you're ingesting live, you are pushing this content out to somewhere like CloudFront or your CDN. Then you have all these clients accessing this, this manifest constantly, and so you're getting really hit hard on the client end. So you have to have a way to cache that content. And what Hulu chose to do is they built a manifest service, and they used auto-scaled EC2 instances across multiple AZs for high availability. So they cached it first from the EC2 instance in memory. That was backed with a Redis cache. And then they also used Aurora behind that for the final persistence of that. And then they also used like a 3-second TTL on the actual, on CloudFront, their CDN as well. So, another alternative we have here for this is we have something called Media Store in AWS. So if you're not interested in building something like this, we have a solution for you that's a console-based service where you could utilize that as well. So, another area we get lots of questions from our customers is, okay, if I want to ingest and package, this live content, how do I need to do that? I think one of the most important things here that you want to look at is, you really want a secure connection and something like a direct connect, right? You're going to have lower latency, less jitter, a more reliable private-based connection. So really, direct connect can be used in place of something like a VPN. And here again, Hulu was using multiple AZs in order to scale across their, numerous encoding partners and using EC2 instances behind that. I think another thing Baskar mentioned was spot instances. And so what, may or may not apply to ingest and packaging, depending on if it's live or if it's VOD. But, spot instances are typically 90% off on-demand pricing. You do get a 2-minute warning, and you can persist your workload to continue it later. Something fairly new we also released was pause and resume, where the when capacity gets taken away from you, we will hibernate your instances for you and automatically resume them. So it really takes away a lot of the heavy lifting for our customers and partners. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Mark. And like Mark was talking about, I think the whole WAD workflow as well as the delivery, I think AWS has a fairly sophisticated mechanisms and infrastructure, which is really kind of for production purposes. And I think that's a good integration. And I want to share some of our existing customer stories and have sort of live customer case studies, just as briefly so that we kind of understand what's happening there. The first one I'm covering is Cinedigm. Cinedigm is actually a US content entity. They work with a lot of studios around the US. It's been an interesting journey with them where we've done completely virtualized Playout for them. And one interesting use case that we've done is to create channels for them which we terminate on Twitch. So Twitch, as you already know, is a gaming platform. Live game streams come through that, and a lot of millennial gamers there. And that's an exciting demographics for Cinedigm to reach. And we've created linear streams for them through their content, including live content. So we actually host live esports capabilities, which are kind of pushed into the platform on the cloud, and the Playout is done on Twitch directly. So this is a pretty exciting proposition where everything is all virtual here, that it goes to a Twitch platform, and the content is ingested on the AWS, like we talked about, from an S3 bucket standpoint, and from there on it gets linearized, played out, and all of the live management and monitoring happens out of Bangalore in India, for example. So that's the way it's set up there. To look at another customer, it's TYT. TYT is an interesting, again, a news channel for the millennial targeted population. Exciting content, news content, pretty. I think it has a very big fan following. And what Amagi does for them in this particular capability is to, again, create and mount a complete news channel for them. It's a 24/7 channel with 6 hours of live content from studios. So studio is in Los Angeles, and from there the content is getting streamed into the AWS infrastructure, where it's orchestrated with advertising and promotion and live logo, and eventually sent to multiple platforms. And one of the most important platforms that they're delivering to is the YouTube TV platform today. And again, it's a pretty interesting proposition where it's a complete live channel. We store their live feeds and live studio streams and recreate and re-air this content again as assets as well. So it's a complete news channel in the offering, but in a complete virtualized environment. And that's the exciting proposition here from a TYT standpoint. The next case study is about Horse and Country. And again, the interesting part of Horse and Country is it is a channel related. It's a lifestyle channel, largely focusing on horses and dogs and pets largely. And again, we are running the key interesting part of Horse and Country is that the channels are completely created and linearized on the AWS cloud, but delivered to even traditional platforms. And when I say traditional platforms, it goes to traditional platforms in Netherlands, in Germany, in Sweden, and so to traditional television and cable and satellite platforms as well. In addition to obviously delivering to Amazon Prime and other online platforms. The beauty of this whole system is the same exact Playout is done once and eventually delivered to a traditional platform through a fiber connectivity. So from AWS, we've done a direct connect fiber connectivity to the platforms that we actually deliver today, which again is one other possibility that digital first companies could explore, where they could go to both traditional platforms as well as for online platforms. So it doesn't stop you from going to traditional platforms just because you're on the cloud. So all of the virtualization can be done here. Again, here we have live sources, downlinked on satellites, piped into the cloud, and where the orchestration of all of the live events happen today. So again, one very interesting case study here. The fourth one, what's showing here is TasteMade. TasteMade is actually a cookery channel. Again, very popular content in the US context. What we've done essentially is to play it out on the cloud and provide it through a direct connect platform to a data center, which is very similar to what I showed you in Horse and Country, very similar sort of a model. And we're connecting it to the YouTube Live platform, YouTube TV platform from an offline data center. The message that I want to drive here is that the whole playout and the management of the content ingested to the orchestration can all be done in the cloud, but delivered in many different formats to many different platforms, be it online platforms or offline cable satellite platforms, or to data centers from there on, where you could egress it to different locations. That's, I think, the fundamental value of a virtualized setup, where you don't need any sort of physical infrastructure or hardware, and you can spin up content completely on demand and being able to address that. To look at it, in summary, if you're looking for linear channel launch, I think an Amagi and AWS partnership is an exciting partnership. It's a very mature partnership, mature product offering, more than 150 channels in about 40 countries. Already are leveraging this capabilities today. So that's advantage. Clearly, if you look at linear, it's a great way to start additional revenue stream generation, be it monetization through subscription or through ad monetization. The possibilities are starting to open up pretty interesting across the globe. No physical infrastructure, that's a big advantage. No assets, everything is on an OpEx model, which kind of makes this whole business model a kind of a win-win situation for everybody, and makes it kind of flexible and amenable to your timelines and to your needs and to your business dynamics. And you can scale and tear it down depending on your needs fundamentally, without having to tie yourself up with any sort of hardware or capital expenditure. Pre-integration with multiple, we already done it with direct-to-consumer models as well as the virtual MVPDs across. So we could kind of leverage our experiences to help you deliver across multiple formats and multiple guidelines that all of these VMVPDs have across. And that's an advantage of working with this particular partnership, because it's already a mature system which has already been delivering to multiple digital first companies across both in the US as well as worldwide. I think the other important differentiator that you need to look at is it's a pre-integrated with content monetization. It means it has ability to generate triggers as well as provide dynamic advertising possibilities, and it comes along with customization from an engineering standpoint, because all of our customers, and we did some interesting work with some of our customers. For example, with Cinedigm, we had integrated their Playout with Twitch API directly. That means where Twitch could actually do the ad monetization. So we did custom API integrations with Twitch, which helped Cinedigm to monetize their content much better than what a traditional form of SCTE-35 triggers would have done for them. So these are some of the interesting possibilities that what we've demonstrated today. So in summary, linear channel launch, Amagi plus AWS is a great partnership that you should explore, and more than happy to share our experiences and case studies in the business models that's evolved around this particular space. And thank you very much for this. And if you have any questions, more than happy to answer that.
Thank you, Baskar and Mark, for all the insights. We do have a few questions that have come up in the question box and also the chat window. For all the attendees, we will continue to take more questions, but let's go with the ones that we've received. So the first question, probably Baskar, you could answer this. How can we create a more interactive TV station on cloud with real-time updates, and how do you manage latency on cloud for live?
Okay, good question. I think there are two questions on that, and I'll try to address it in two. The first part of the question, you're talking about interactivity. If you look at it, cloud playout enables interactivities of multiple different fashions. Obviously, you can create new graphics templates and create new text information and actually be able to update the text information dynamically. You can generate through rendering new graphics capabilities and actually insert into your content, which is already available. For example, an Amagi Cloud Port already supports those capabilities. Right. The other interesting thing that we've looked at from an integration standpoint, which is useful for our customers, is social integrations. So we've done, for example, tweet integrations. Right. So you could essentially take your tweet in near real time, bring it through some sort of platform to kind of filter the content, and then pass it on directly to our Playout, which in turn can actually render it in real time onto the boxes. So those are some of the interactivity stuff that we've done. We have had customers who are looking at jukebox capabilities, for example. So I think essentially with an RSS feed capability that we have in our systems, or through your own manual approach of interacting with the system in terms of text inputs that you can do, you could create very different interactive capabilities on this part of it.
Sure.
Now, the second question about live latency, I think that's one of the fundamental challenges of any sort of cloud Playout platform is how do you minimize the live latency across from an end-to-end standpoint. At Amagi, it's been one of our biggest endeavors to create a low latency capability from an end-to-end standpoint. So we look at glass-to-glass latencies, and we've engineered solutions fundamentally targeting this particular point of interest, from the point of ingesting our live content, orchestrating it, and delivering it at the fastest speed possible, with the lowest latency that's possible. And that's essentially driven by multiple factors. So I'm not going to go into technical details at this point of time, but largely we've got a fairly competitive low latency solution. And we've leveraged multiple protocols to make it. And for example, just to give you, HLS and MPEG Dash are not the greatest protocols if you're looking for low latency. So we've looked at other protocols like SRT and others, which can help us to do it. More than happy to share more experiences offline on this particular point.
Yeah, sure, Baskar. I think for the benefit of the attendees, I would request them to flag any questions directly to us at cloudandme@amagi.com. We will also share the recording of this webinar and provide you a link for further question and answers. And probably on that platform, we can be a little bit more in detail. Mark, a question for you from one of the attendees. How are you protecting your cloud assets?
Yeah, sure. That's of course one of the questions we get right away, especially if you have studios or other people that are concerned about their pre-release content getting out there in the wild. So, for example, if you create an S3 bucket, by design, that S3 bucket is only you're the only one who has access to it. Now, if you're a content provider and you want to give access to someone like Amagi or someone else to process your content, we have a best practice called cross-account roles. So you can create a role that gives their account access, and then from there you can use things like S3 analytics to then see who's accessing the content and when and where, and when they're done, you can revoke that access. You also want to be doing things like using encryption, again, whether that's your own encryption or just encryption at rest. Those are definitely some of the best practices, at least for securing in like S3 buckets and those sorts of things. I think we also talked around just the way that those instances that are processing the content, those should be in private subnets, no access to the internet, so that no one can get access to that host and then get access to your content. But that's a number of ways. Again, I think if you go back to the AWS artifacts and request a copy of the pre-release Studios for Media Asset Management Hardening Guide, that gives a lot more prescriptive guidance on just what you can do to protect your assets.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. Baskar, probably a question for you. Once the channel is up on Amagi and AWS, how do you take it from there down to the head end? Can you just break down the transport, how the transport works is the question.
Okay. Again, there are multiple different ways to transport the content once the playout happens on the cloud. And let me kind of delineate this into 3 buckets so it's easier for us to understand. If you are an online, if you're going to an online platform, a virtual MVPD, or to an online OTT video platform, then you technically either give it an RTP, RTMP, or an HLS stream directly. So it's all from an egress out of the AWS cloud onto the particular endpoint that you want to deliver, which is pre-integrated. So that's one option. The other option that we are seeing is if you want to get to a traditional head-end, there are a couple of ways again. Cost-effective option is to use the public internet with some sort of an FCC and encryption capability on top of it. Essentially, for example, ZigSee and LTN are potential standards that we've seen. Companies which kind of provide those capabilities. We have integrated deeply with ZigSee, for example, for some of our customers. But that's for if you really depend on the public cloud. If you are a high SLA, redundant, uptime guarantee needed channels, then you technically leverage direct connect. So what Amagi has done is to create a direct connect to POP, either like a Tata POP or a BT POP. From there, we run a fiber or directly terminate on the platform itself through direct connect, for example. Okay. Those are capabilities, which is a highly reliable system that and dual and diverse redundant system that it can deliver. So it depends on your cost, your reliability needs, which kind of it's across all of these spectrums.
Sure. Thanks. I think there's a related question, Baskar. I think some part that you already covered. The question is, how does the end signal transport work with AWS? I know you spoke about that as part of your response to the earlier question, but do you want to have any couple of add-ons to that?
So as I told you, I think just to reiterate, out of the AWS, once you created the channel, you mounted the channel, you can either, you take it over all IP on a public cloud and a public endpoint, internet endpoint, through a global IP address and then deliver it to a platform, either on RTP, RTMP, or on a ZigSee or LTN, or you take it through a direct connect and connect it to different endpoint platforms directly, which is what essentially I talked about. So there are two ways to do that.
Okay, I'm sure that would have addressed the query. The other question is, what are the potential and pitfalls of dynamic ad insertion or replacement in linear channels to drive additional revenue?
Okay.
I think both potential and pitfalls is what the attendee is trying to understand.
So first, if you look at any sort of linear channel, there are two ways to monetize them. If you're going to deliver to another third-party platform, be it a vMVPD platform, for example, or any other platform, the DAI part of it is largely dependent upon the business agreements that you can have with the platform. So that's both an opportunity as well as a pitfall in some sense, right? For example, take a Sling TV or a YouTube Live or Hulu, for example, would take in 2 minutes of your advertising and monetize it on a DII basis for their subscribers and potentially provide you a rev share model. So that's one way to kind of monetize it. The big elephant in the room is that 8 minutes of advertising, which is kind of going unmonetized today. You have two or three options, depending on the maturity of and the scale of your current business operations. You could technically provide the 8 minutes off to the vMVPDs themselves to monetize it further, which means your dependency on the vMVPD is extremely high. So that's again a cons to this whole approach. The second option that's evolving is the programmatic option, which is kind of, I think it's in early days, but I think in the next 6 months to a year, we're seeing programmatic linear television monetization options evolving, which will be pretty interesting because it is not at an individual level, but at a demographic level that you can start targeting. I'm not going to go into details right now, but there are potential possibilities to address that as well. Right? Sure. But I think it's opened up. From a monetization point, there are possibilities today to do this today.
Okay. Sure. I think there's a related question, and I'm probably going to expand on it. You spoke about monetization opportunities for the digital first channels when they go linear. How do you see the balance between the monetization opportunity versus the cost implication of somebody who's not linear today but will like to go to linear to look at more expanded audience and revenue opportunities?
I think at least in the experiences of some of our customers, if you are going to some of the primary distribution platforms, vMVPD operators, then there's potential possibility that you'll make more money than the cost of getting a linear channel out.
Right.
Cost of mounting a linear channel today has come down, so it's not like, although you can get a broadcast grade capability, but at a much lower cost than what it is for running a complete channel on a traditional platform, for example. So typical traditional platforms would cost you in the range of anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000 per year sort of stuff. Versus if you're running on a platform, on a cloud platform, for example, you could do it as low as anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 per annum, for example. It's a sophisticated, large setups that you can actually potentially look at. So I think that's where and if you could look at monetization, depending on the subscription revenue and the possibilities, it really depends on the content that you have and how that's going to play out.
Sure. Thanks, Baskar. We have a lot more questions coming up, and I request both the attendees and the speakers to stay on a little longer so that we can address all the questions that have been posted. In case we're not able to do, I just want to assure all the folks that we will send out a detailed email in this regard. Okay, here's a question on what is the Amagi adapter MAM? Is it an on-premise piece of equipment?
Okay, again, there are multiple ways of ingesting content. I'll kind of walk you through 2 or 3 scenarios so it's easier for us. And Amagi, what we have done is to enable a simple third-party tool. So you could use something like a Cloudberry or an Aspera or a Signiant to push your content onto the S3 buckets. That's one of the ways to do it. So that our SLA starts from the moment it actually hits the S3 buckets. From there on, Amagi takes responsibility from an infrastructure standpoint. That's a simple, less sophisticated approach. There are customers where we've integrated deeply into on-prem MAM systems and storage capabilities that they have. Where, for example, when you upload a playlist, it identifies the missing assets and automatically comes back into a software sitting on the on-premise, which connects with your MAM, and using priority queue systems, be able to extract exact assets and pipe it back into the cloud. So it's as sophisticated as a complete missing playlist automated and integrated with your MAM capabilities on your on-premise, to as simple as just having an Aspera or a Signiant client, or even a file transfer, for example, some of the lower end clients that we've done, for example, you could technically leverage multiple capabilities, right?
Okay, sure. There's another question related to the Amagi linear channel origination. Now, what kind of traffic and billing systems are compatible with the Amagi platform?
I think, okay, first, we work with multiple traffic and billing systems, essentially by having an open API model where we customize and integrate it with multiple different scheduling capabilities already. We've already done it with IBMS, we've done it with all the major capabilities today already from a standpoint. So we don't have any specific restrictions. We've done it with BXF formats, we've done it with multiple, because we work with about 40, 50 of larger channels and smaller channels. Correct. We've done a mix of all of them, ultimately. But essentially, it's an open adapter on which you can connect and integrate any of your third-party scheduling systems. We have customers who do a very simple CSV format on Excel sheets to customers who do IBMS, which comes to our system.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. I think there's another question regarding if Amagi can accept HLS as a source for live stream and what is the latency expected. I think you covered a little bit and why you choose different type of format, but this is specific to HLS. What are your comments?
I think, again, the system allows us to accept HLS streams. The only question is HLS latency is driven by the segment duration that you have in HLS. So depending on the duration of the HLS segments, it will drive the latency needs from a system standpoint. We would highly recommend bringing in something more for streamed models, so that latencies can be minimized. But the system has no restriction on taking HLS as well.
Okay, sure. On the real-time Twitter integration and other social integrations that we spoke about, there's a question if it's being pushed by a bit playlist, checking for possible censorship because it's coming in real time. So how do you guarantee censorship and viewer preference?
So what our customers have done is to have an equivalent of playlister in some sense, where they do the regulation of the content, censor the content, identify the tweets that they think should get into the broadcasting or screen. And then we use that. That's the interface that we provide to our customers and done custom integrations for them to do that. But there is always a censorship step that we do strongly recommend all our customers to do it. We do not own that piece of the puzzle, but we have many different partners who provide that today.
Thank you. I think an add-on question is how do you integrate with rights management software like FilmTrack or RightsLine?
We do not have those integrations right now. Essentially, all our customers and what they do is when they ingest the content, they provide us the metadata in terms of rights standpoint. So we have a standardized metadata format on which we get the rights information into our systems. But technically, we could integrate or custom integrate the whole thing and extract the rights information and dump it into a metadata file and bring it into our systems. But we have not done it thus far for any of our customers because most of our customers already have it and provide it in the metadata format that we request them to do today. That's the way we handle it today.
Okay, sure. I think I have one last question for both you and Mark. Probably you can jointly comment on this. This is a slightly loaded question, so I don't know how much of it we can cover in this part of this QA. What would be the typical CDN origination stream client strategy for serving about 5 million concurrent users? So what's the strategy that one should look at when they're looking at this kind of usage?
Again, it's a kind of, Mark, you might want to interject here. I think, see, again, today 5 million concurrent users is not a challenge in terms of delivering the content from a CDN standpoint, be it CloudFront or any of the other third-party CDNs. I think the fundamental challenge comes is how are you going to do ad insertions and VAI? And at Amagi, we've had sharing experiences where we've had customers asking for 10 million concurrent announcements, right?
Correct.
And we've come with some custom solutions. When I say custom, it's very specific to hyperscale advertising and targeting solutions that we've actually evolved. More than happy to share some experiences with the question, who will ask the question later.
Sure.
But that's one part of it. But I think from a CDN standpoint, 5 million concurrency is not a challenge in this particular day and age in terms of our understanding of CDN maturities that exist today.
Okay. Okay, sure.
And there are many ways to skin these buckets and create multiple different playlists, and there are many ways to address that particular problem. I think it's the scope of this conversation will be very hard to address it.
Yeah, address it. That's what I also presume. Mark, would you like to add any comments to what Baskar added?
Yeah, sure. If you look at just the Hulu use case I discussed, and you can go in their reInvent presentation and sort of watch that. But yeah, I would agree that that's 5 million concurrents, not a problem, but I think as Baskar said, the devil's in the details. So, if you're, for example, your players are constantly pulling your manifest, and if your manifest isn't available, they're going to stop playing. So, using S3 as an origin for your content and multiple CDNs, this is all very doable. Definitely, maybe at some later point, we can share more details on this.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. I think we've come to the end of the Q&A session. It's been a thoroughly engaging session, a lot of interesting questions from the attendees. I'll just once again reiterate that we will share the recording of this webinar for your on-demand consumption. Mark and Baskar, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing us your insights. And I think we will see a lot of digital-first companies taking the linear route in the coming months. And once again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.